And we're live. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Colin to do a chat, lazy interview. I don't know.
That seems right.
A lazy interview. That's the name right there. A lazy
Lazy
interview.
interview.
Yeah.
A lazy
Um,
Saturday interview.
yeah, exactly. Just like that. And yeah, I don't know where to start now. I was doing my intro and then.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I haven't done lives in so long, and then like all of a sudden I'm like, I have an interview that I've been wanting to do for pretty much like a year when we like first
Oh.
like started communicating.
Hmm.
The back and forth, back when you first came onto the scene,
It's true.
and it's like, and it was, and then quiet.
That's so about that because I was just actually thinking today, I was like, I haven't posted on Instagram in like a month. And because for the longest time, for like up until Ocean Dry, basically, I made work for myself and, for school and things like that, but it's never anything that I wanted to like sell or distribute or anything like that. So getting onto Instagram with the Ocean Dry Tarot and like putting my work out there was really new for me. So I was gonna say like came onto the scene like a firecracker, but like no, it was like a slow, quiet trickle at first.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I'm not used to. I'm a little more used to it now, but if it falls off, I'm like, yeah, this feels kind of normal. It's, nothing big. It's just what I do is not tell people about the stuff I'm making. And then sometimes I do, I guess.
You see, I have the opposite problem. I talk about things that I want to do and I'm going to do, but then I just don't follow through.
Oh, together though, we're like two halves of like a fully functional person.
I think we're very yin and yang. I was thinking about that because I was like, I remember watching interviews with you and like Y and from the past, and I remember watching them, and I was like, wow, he's like very like I'm very like I feel like I'm more mathematical and like more Hode sphere type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're very much the netstock side, very artistic and very and I'm like, ah.
Yep. I like to think that I'm a real like mathematical, logical guy, but I think you're very right. At the end of the day, my mind thinks in like weird abstract blurs, and it's much more about like the experience or the artsiness of it than the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I'm very much into like the system and all that. Like that's why I loved your deck to kind of get into that was the intricacies and the interconnectedness and like the hints, and like as each of the majors were coming out, I was like, wait a minute, what is he doing here? I was like, there's something here. What? How? What? And I made a few guesses, and I'm like, nope. And then you reveal that, I'm like, oh,
Yes, I remember that.
okay.
Hmm.
I was like, this is very different. This is something new. I like this. This is what the tarot world needs.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank
It's
you.
it's I've that's all I can say. The only thing that's ever been as groundbreaking as your deck, I would say, is like the Marielle, but even the Marielle like stays true to its roots. Yeah, and it's to like, like I would say like this, or like something, but actually no, scratch that. Well, okay. I've come to some realizations about your deck too, though. as
Amazing.
as like as like as like new and fresh as it is, it's actually, unfortunately, but like at the same time, it still is new and fresh. But it's like it kind of goes back as well. I noticed this. I was reading Sefer Yetzirah, and I finished that, and I was
Mhm.
looking at it, and I'm like, and I was reading back one of the chapters, and I saw how the paths and the letters were organized, and then how you organized your deck, I was like, that's it right there. And I was like,
Yeah.
is that what you used? Was that like intentional from the very beginning? Because it's like looking at it now, I'm like, it's really well balanced, and it makes sense that way compared to like Golden Dawn.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the Golden Dawn organization on the Tree of Life is beautiful, but it wasn't my initial intention to go out and be like, I'm going to remap the Tree of Life and, change where paths are. It was the Thoth Tarot, Crowley's Thoth, that really kind of like inspired me to do so. That's the deck I kind of learned tarot with, which will be no surprise to anybody who knows how I read. And Crowley switched two of the paths, the Star and the Emperor. One of them went from like the very bottom of the tree to the very top, and vice versa. And it bothered the heck out of me for so long
It
because
annoys me.
I know it does, and I have so much respect for that deck, but it drives me insane. Partially because I'm like, why? Like he had a vision, and his holy guardian angel said Netzach is not the star, or no, excuse me, Zadi is not the star.
Yeah.
And so he decided to like switch him around, and it does things to the zodiac arrangement and all that. But for the longest time, I was like, okay, I need to justify this in my brain. I need to figure out what it is. One thing that Crowley writes in the Book of Thoth, though, is that everybody needs to make their own tree of life. And I assumed when reading that, he meant like everybody needs to kind of like interpret things for themselves and understand what the tree of life means. And then eventually I got to the point where I'm like, well, I could just make my own. Like I could make it totally different. And that once I kind of got myself to that place, it was so freeing. It was like I can organize things exactly the way I want. It just felt good.
Yeah. So so one of the questions that I have is like, so when doing that, what resources on the Tree of Life were you using at the time when making your own?
There's a book called The Kabbalistic Tarot by Robert Wang.
Love
this
it.
was like, it's such a good book.
So good.
Deep dives on like the Tree of Life through the lens of the Golden Dawn, and does a beautiful job in explaining why it's organized the way it is and how it's organized. And also some of the stuff from Crowley too. He, like a lot of his work is based on the Tree of Life. And I think all of their rationale for why things are where they're at and how things are placed and what the paths mean is beautiful. And it creates this amazing narrative of like rising up the Tree of Life, finding your higher self and like reigniting and reconnecting with it. But I couldn't find any reason of like why things were laid under the tree the way they were. And I think that's what bothered me the most is I couldn't find those resources. I might have just been looking in the wrong spots. I was pretty new to tarot at the time, but I was like, these resources aren't here. I can't understand the basis of what's happening. I'm going to try it my own way. A million people have made a tarot deck based on the Golden Dawn,
I'm like thinking back on like looking at the 3 horizontal paths. I think those are like really telling as to like the basis for why someone would organize their tree as it was as they did. And I'm looking at it and I see the Golden Dawn's explanation for those 3 paths, where you have going from the bottom up, you have the Tower, and then you have Strength, and then you have the Empress.
Yes.
And like looking at how the point of those is to like bridge the gap between the 2 pillars of like, mercy and severity in different ways. But it's strange though how they put, the intellectual side with the artistic side of the brain connected by the Tower.
Yeah, and I guess it makes sense because the Tower is something that like dissolves and breaks down. So you want to like unite those sides of the brain, like get to that middle pillar. But agreed, there's some strangeness there.
Yeah, I get it. It's like art kind of dissolves. Well, no, because Netzach is more than just like the artistic side. It's also, I guess, the religious and the spiritual side, if I remember correctly as well. And so it's like, I guess one breaks down the other, and I think that's how they meant to bridge it. But then looking at it as Shin, as I believe it's on how that path is Shin on your deck, right? Judgment.
Yes, correct.
So I'm trying to think of like how that would work, like maybe science like calling into judgment or examining, the religious, artistic, spiritual side versus and vice versa,
So I think this represents perfectly the different ways that our brain work. because you're taking it very much from like the what is like why is this path here
Yeah.
like systematically or meaningly. And I think that there's a lot of conversation to be had around like where do the paths fall on the tree of life and how does that work. I approached it at first completely visually. I have a visual aid. Do you mind if I show?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Let's see if this works. Oh, perfect. Yes. So this is the normal arrangement of the tree of life.
Okay.
And this shows the mother letters, the single and the double letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and kind of where they fall on the path.
Maybe I can. Hold on. Maybe I can make this easier for us and
sure thing.
Because I think you have it on your channel. Much better.
I do.
Much more efficient. Let me find you first. Let's see. Oh no, that's not your name. It's. Oh yeah, I'll find you. I'll get there. So
no worries.
But continue with what you're saying. Meanwhile, I find
this. So this symbol is the tree of life for anybody who's not familiar, and this is the paths of the major arcana in the tarot that connect all these different sephirot together. And the thing that always drove me crazy was there's a spot on the tree of life for all of the Hebrew letters, and there's like a certain number of vertical, horizontal, and diagonal paths. So there are 3 horizontal paths, for example, and 3 mother letters, but the mother letters are shown in red, and they are, definitely not on those horizontal 3. So let's see if I can find mine. So my tree, I took all of those letters and I put them in their, like, in my mind, correct spot, where they kind of fit naturally on the tree. You can also see I tweaked the shape just ever so slightly. I have a reason for that too. But that was my original basis, was like, okay, what happens if you, instead of, placing things on the path for specific meaning reasons, organize them visually or kind of based on like what the tree is pointing you to do? What outcome does that have? How does the narrative of those majors then change?
Okay. Because I was reading Sefer Yetzirah. Meanwhile, I skimmed through your channel here, your videos. I don't think it's gonna be that quick.
I know my whole breakdown of it's like 40 minutes. So
with Kabbalah, there's no such thing as a 10-minute Kabbalah video.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't expect there to be one.
Maybe like a brief introduction to an introduction, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, there's this one right here. Now I find it.
Of course.
Let me see here. Oh. Pause here. Let me see here. Let me see how I can do this. Let me see. No, I'm not sure how I could do this. I know there's a way to share my screen, but I'm not going to do that right now. But next time I'll figure it out.
That's the teaser. Keep them coming back for more.
Yeah. Fit it in there somehow. But yeah, I was where were we? Arrangement on the Tree of Life,
yes.
The majors. But yeah. It's like Sefer Yetzirah talks about, like, there's 12 diagonals, 12 zodiac, 3 mothers, 3 horizontals, and then there's the 7, right? Yeah, 7 vertical.
Yep.
But the thing that, and like everything kind of lines up with like the letters and astrology, except the planets. That's where Golden Dawn switched around a bunch of stuff from traditional Jewish Kabbalah.
Yes.
But from what I'm taking, it seems like you kind of went back in a way.
Yep.
Yeah, you kind of put it back to how they are. So I'm interested to see, because I'm sure that has to change things.
It does.
It's like, hopefully it reveals something that like explains the majors better in a way.
At least for me, like the experience was very much changing the narrative of what they're trying to say, because there's a real structure to like the fool's journey, if you will, going from the fool to the world and what that says about what these majors are doing and how they're shaping someone or an experience. But taking everything, organizing it differently, it actually ended up renumbering every single one of the majors. I didn't intend it to, but they all ended up shuffling around. So my deck starts with the sun and it ends with the moon. So like right off the bat there, you have like a rising and a setting, and there has to be a different narrative in there, just because the Fool to the World is just speaking of something so different.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found him, please.
Oh no. You go on. You go.
Don't worry.
You keep talking.
For me, it was like the idea of the tree changing or learning about something really sparked the idea of like, how do we learn? What is the experience of knowledge like? And that ended up being the new progression that I made. So the sun is like your consciousness first dawning, and the moon in this deck ends up representing your higher self. And what does it mean to go from waking up to embodying your higher self, and what does that journey look like along the way?
Oh yeah, that is. I'm like it. That's like completely like a contrast to what I'm like learning. I'm like visualizing like Robert Place's Terror of the Sevenfold Mystery with the sun, with the moon rising up to the sun, with that mermaid like woman rising up to the moon, and it's like she's supposed to be, I believe, like I think she's like the subconscious, and the sun is the consciousness, like you said. But but it's like that was like, I'm like, that's a very different approach from usually, because it's like, but then again, I am very unfamiliar with like the planets and, and their associations with that. But that's very it's very Neoplatonic, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, where else was I going to take this? All right, you mentioned the numbers and the renumbering.
Yes.
And so like for me, it's like with tarot, numbers are like its core. Very like, if not near the core of what the tarot is. So changing it, like just like to focus on one card, you changed you changed the Emperor to number 1.
Yep.
And that right there, I'm like, my brain can't handle it.
Oh, I know. It took me
like,
a long time to get there too.
Yeah, like, because I'm always like looking at the Magician as the initiator, but I'm like, well, it's like when I see the Emperor, we can look at that as, as like as God the Father, I guess, because I always find it strange how low they put like the Emperor on the Tree of Life, where he's like where they even like put him in profile, because it's like you can't look at him directly, and it's like, well, it's like, if that's supposed to be him, why not put him a little bit higher?
I couldn't agree more.
And that's kind of where I'm getting at there. But I'm looking at the number though. I'm like, okay, an emperor is nothing without his empire, and for there to be an empire, there already has to be something pre-established. And I'm like, well, okay, and now I'm like kind of like figuring it out right now as I'm talking. It's like, would the empires, would that be like the potentiality within Keter in the first one that he's like kind of ruling on or coming from? That's just an idea that I'm getting at. But it's like, I'm thinking of like how the Emperor can embody the number 1 numerologically, for in your deck at least.
For me, so like the sun is that initial like dawning and waking up. If we're talking about the journey of knowledge, it's like stumbling across a topic that you're interested in. The Emperor, yes, there is an element of emperors that is very larger than life and in charge and regal to the point where you can't even look at them. But also an emperor is just a person. Like, they are a human being the same that anyone else is. They are placed into an empire. It's very rare that an emperor establishes like a whole new civilization, let's say. So it's this idea of like stepping into knowledge, in this case, all of this stuff, and there's no expert like a novice, and feeling dominant and confident, even though you're just a person, you're just another thing there. It's the Emperor feeling without necessarily like the gusto to back it up. Okay.
I think I see it now. It's like it's more rather the inheritance of the knowledge that you can get. Yeah. Okay. Oh, all right. I'm loving it already. Loving it already. Okay, there we go. And so that's one thing, but it's like, then you have like so many other cards though. So it's like, it's gonna take some time for me to get around to the rest of them. But Lucy here said the Emperor as Aries, that matches up with your deck as well, or did you? Right, that makes also makes sense. Aries as the first sign. I was reading, because I've been studying, finally getting into astrology studies. you know, I read, you know, I think it was in this book here, and I read up on Aries, and I was reading what she said here. Let me see if I can find it and like read the quote out here, if I can find it.
Oh, no worries. I meant to show folks the Emperor too if they haven't seen it.
Yeah, look at that. I love it.
Thank you.
Let's see. That's the planets. Where are we? Where are you? No, I passed it. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So she says Aries represents the uprushing fountain of life, fire of the head, untamed fire of impulse. And what else? What else? There's another part here. Like like reading it, it was just like the initial spark, the first start, and I'm like, so why is it kind of a little bit lower? Again, it's like,
yeah,
and it's like, if that's that, then you know that has to that power, that association kind of has to. And reading it, I'm like, that would be more like magician, you know, Aries associated to the magician.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, I read another book that was like talking about like how Mercury is like the esoteric ruler of Aries as the shepherd, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of Christian imagery going on here.
There really is, yes. There sure is.
There really is, yeah.
Anytime Golden Dawn gets involved.
And yeah, absolutely. But you show it as the as like what is that? The Stonehenge, you know, showing up, and it's like that perfect timing, this ancient thing, and it's like this ancient monolith showing, like being there forever before, and so it's that inheritance, like you said, that this ancient secret, you know, hidden mysteries of these stones. Like, yeah, it definitely is like a discovery of mystery right there.
Very much.
Guess, yeah.
That actually speaks nicely to the second card, Hierophant, as well.
Yeah, it's like, it's just this, again, another monolith, a part of like the entire cycle that is like the Stonehenge. It's just one pillar. Okay, here we go. And so this one is Taurus as well, right?
Yes.
This is number 2, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all of the planetary and zodiac associations and element associations from the Golden Dawn, those I kept because I wanted to keep something. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm throwing out the normal numbering system. I'm literally like changing some of the lines on the Tree of Life. I'm completely changing the numbers. I wanted something to be consistent, so it still felt like tarot, even though it was ultimately very different. Yeah. So yeah, all of these will end up being the same zodiac and planets and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So this card, this is the one that kind of gave you a little bit of trouble, didn't it? Right? Back when you were making
design wise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was it? Why did she give you so much trouble?
It's an interesting one because I knew that in many ways, these cards kind of read similar to me, at least in the Ocean Dry. So it was tough being like, okay, where exactly does the Emperor fall and where does Hierophant fall? And if anybody doesn't know, the idea of Ocean Dry, let me find, this is the Ocean Dry card. This is my extra major. The idea is that you wake up in a desert and, oh, this glare is bizarre. You wake up in a desert, and after journeying through the desert, you realize that it's actually the sandy bottom of the ocean floor. So it's like this huge perspective shift. And what Hierophant is doing is it is referencing the final step here. So it is that kind of like mysterious knowledge that can be given to you, but you have to internalize it to understand yourself, because somebody can tell you anything, but until you experience it, until you know how to put all the pieces in place, you don't understand what it means or where it goes.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre thing to draw. I was like, how do I express that? Once I made Ocean Dry, though, then it clicked, like, okay, I can reference my thesis of the deck in kind of an esoteric way that still relates to where we're at in the story.
Yeah, you have that, like, I'm assuming it's the sun at the bottom and the moon at the top.
Correct.
And it's like, you know, it's like there's that as above, so below, that, you know, the one mind upon the one thing. It's a,
Very much, yes.
it's but like that, and but it's reflected. It's showing a mirror like flipped, and it's like, yeah, it's wow. It's so good.
Thank you. I super appreciate that.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's but the so Crowley usually and other like Thoth or other decks kind of have like a darker take on the Hierophant sometimes. They kind of put this weird like I think it's because it's like the number 5 usually associated to that. But I think you do a good job of like showing the duality aspect there. And so was like what would you say to people who have issues with like that, like the number 2 as duality and like trying to break away from the High Priestess, you know, and fitting that with, you know, the Hierophant in a way and like synthesizing a new way to read this card.
Yeah, for me, the Hierophant is so much about, you know, taking the divine and making it accessible to people.
Mm-hmm.
Like a clergyman or a pope or something is like a good representational figure of that. But I think that they are just the symbol of the act of doing that translation almost. So taking the duality of something that you can't understand and making it something that you can understand. I think there's an inherent kind of polarity there, and they are the intermediary between.
Okay. Oh, and that's perfect. I'm like, of course. Why didn't I think of that?
Oh yeah, and this is what was so cool about this process is, you know, like stumbling across the majors in a new way. Like the Fool is 3, for example. It drove me insane that the Fool wasn't 0, but it just forces you, like you said, to kind of rethink and apply new numbers to things and figure out exactly where does it all settle, where does it land, and that was a very cool thing to explore and find.
Yeah, I think with the Fool S3, my brain is going immediately to the Kabbalistic, you know, when you go from, you know, Keter to Hokmah to Bina, you make that triangle, and that's like the portal to the rest of the Tree of the Life, and you go through that, and it's like that sounds very Fool-like, you know, to go through the rest like just like that through that portal.
You're also crossing the abyss at that point, so you're not in Kansas anymore. You're in very new territory.
Exactly. That's in it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. In our story, we're finally leaving these initial ruins and going out into the desert, and the entire desert is taken over with a mirage, like a heat mirage. So it looks like the ocean. So it's this idea of like seeing the very end, but just like jumping in and not understanding it, kind of similar in some ways to the Hierophant, but just going in and like being completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, let's see. What's the next thing on the list? You kind of talked about. I feel like you've kind of done that enough in previous videos. I feel like if people want to,
it's very true. Yes.
Like if they want to see your explanations, you know, if there's anything else that comes to mind on the majors, particularly that I can think of, that I'm like, what about? Then I'll bring it up later. But let's see. But what else to talk about? What else to talk about? Let me turn to my notes, and if not, we'll see what the people say about the chat. But let me see here.
Of course.
Okay. We talked about that. Let's see. Okay. I think we touched all the notes that I had on on my paper. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Since it's been a while, this is my first one. I was like, and this is kind of going back down, kind of making it more relatable to people, you know, back to my deck collecting questions of stuff that I used to do back then. What are your favorite decks? What are you using right now? Do you read for others, or do you just read for yourself? I think you've said that you do. You?
I don't tend to read for other people. I don't have any space like an Etsy shop or anything where like I sell readings. If somebody wants me to read for them, it's always fun. I always love to. Okay. I think I read tarot like people read books. For me, it's less about like drawing cards and interpreting them, although I think that's really fun. I like going through decks and understanding what is this deck's voice, what is it saying, picking apart symbols. So I would say I don't really read for others or myself very often, although I have been drawing a lot more cards with my partner lately and kind of interpreting things in new ways. It's been very fun.
Yeah, I haven't been doing readings for a while, like for a while there, but I'm kind of getting back into it. I don't know. Um, yeah, but what are your current favorite decks right
Favorite
now?
decks.
Anything new that's coming out that you're excited about? Any new acquirements to your collection?
New stuff that I've acquired that I'm really excited about. The Marguerite Peterson has
Oh,
been, it's not a new deck, but it's new to me. That kind of like very expressive abstract quality is speaking to me in a really cool way. Most of my tarot life lately has been absorbed with Henry deck, which is a new tarot deck that I'm working on. And I'm not here to like plug all my own work, but it's just been so
no,
front of mind that is
please
like,
do.
okay, cool.
Please do.
That has been like completely kind of dominating my tarot brain in many ways. New decks that are coming out, I keep an eye on things, but there isn't a lot that's like immediately pulling to me. Have you seen the Mindscapes Tarot on Instagram?
Mindscapes Tarot. It sounds familiar.
It's these beautiful like oil paintings, or maybe they're pastels of like naturescapes, and
oh,
it's really good.
yes, I have been following. He just came out with like the Wheel of Fortune.
Yes, it's the spider.
Yeah, which I was like a little bit kind of already seen it, but I'm like, okay, I'll let it pass because it's like it's all like landscapes. I'm really loving a lot of like. There's quite a few decks coming out with like landscapes type of thing. You have Majestic Earth. There was one thing that I wish Tarot Oracle. He has his Echoes of Nature Oracle deck, and I wish he did more of those landscape pictures in his deck, rather than the animals. I want to see more more landscapes.
Yes.
And I think that was one of the best things, like very interesting things I should say, about the Mary L, where the 4s are all landscapes. I'm not even gonna bother because it's gonna take too long to show all the cards.
They'll of course be at the bottom.
Yeah. I'm really liking that, and it kind of, for some reason, that's kind of calling to me for some reason, of like environments and where we put ourselves and where we go through and all that. And it's like your deck kind of Ocean Drive, to kind of go back into it again, it goes through that. You're going through this desert, and it's like, what archetypally does that entail for a reader, or when you're meditating on a card and all that, what it's like to be in the desert, which I feel like that's probably a very stressful place for me to be. Where's the water?
Absolutely. And that's the trick, is the water's everywhere because you're actually in the ocean.
Yeah.
But I agree what you're saying about kind of yearning for a little something different with a tarot deck, or something that makes you feel a little more enveloped by it. Because with a card like the Hierophant, a lot of people really struggle with that card, or the Emperor, let's say, because it's like this dominant masculine figure on the card, where it's not, in my mind anyway, the card is not supposed to be about that figure. They are just a symbol of what the card is representing. So you take a card like Majestic Earth, and it strips away all that stuff, and it just lets you feel Emperor, what that is supposed to feel like, instead of how it's supposed to make you feel, like what it's imposing on you.
Yeah, it's like what is, again, you are the emperor there.
Yeah, totally.
It's like the emperor isn't the president or a government figure. It's, it could be, it is, but it's like, it's also in you. It's also surrounding you, and it's also in your family and in stranger. It's open your mind, people.
For sure. And I think it's cool that deck creators are stretching the bounds of what tarot can be. And that's what I try and do too. Even for myself, like, I think we all get sometimes in an RWS or a Thoth box, whatever it is. And it's hard to kind of like break the bonds without seeing something new or experiencing it in a way that you haven't before.
Yeah, that's why I think I love that I've, I always do this to myself. I always do too much for myself to challenge myself for some reason, and I don't follow through. But the few times that I do follow through, it pays off pretty well, Marielle again. That was
Mhm.
my beginner deck. I collected decks, and then
Oh
it's like,
wow,
that was the first deck I full on studied,
that's
and that
awesome.
and that helped me to break through of that. And then after that, it's like everything else was just, and then you came along.
And then, like a vision through the clouds, I appeared.
Exactly.
Thank you. It's very
Yes.
sweet.
Yes. And I said, it, it's what we deserve.
Oh,
Like, yeah, every single new card. And so Ocean Dry is very like more esoteric, more of a spiritual journey, if one could say. But I really like,
sure.
let's move on to your new deck slash decks.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I don't know if I ended up writing that into the description here, but I was like, he's also I put in and the creator of the Henry / Rudolph deck parentheses S.
Yes. Amazing.
and so with that one went more intimate, very
Hmm.
much
Yes.
as a real world thing, and it reminds me of like the humble beginnings of the tarot itself as just the Marseille playing card. And it's like Rudolph, if I'm remembering the story correctly,
Hmm.
Rudolph was the creator of that deck while searching for a cure for his wife.
Yes, correct.
Okay. uh, and then Henry picks it up and changes it all, and that's
Yep.
very. Is that supposed to be a reflection of like the tarot's journey itself? Like, like in a weird way, like, tarot was at first Henry, but then now it's in this generation, in this era, it's Rudolph. No, vice versa.
I think,
Rudolph and then to Henry.
yes, correct. I think in some ways, yes, there is kind of a symbolic change there that wasn't actually intentional with making Henry deck. I think intimate is like the perfect word that you used for it. I wanted it to be almost like really divorced from tarot, and I wanted to see how far away could I get while still keeping it as a tarot deck. So he takes Henry is this kid who's sick and stuck in his room all the time, and he finds this tarot deck in the floorboards. He finds the key, and it's like kind of detailed in the story, and he uses it as a diary. He uses all the cards as a diary and just documents his life. So it tells this whole story that has nothing to do with tarot. But as I started doing it, I think even subconsciously, like tarot kind of emerged from that process too. I really tried to pick cards that Henry would gravitate to for the particular story beat that I was trying to cover, but it ended up reflecting what the tarot was. So in my mind, Henry deck is almost like how tarot can infect our brains, and I mean that in the best of way, and just like subtly superimpose itself into everything we do, and how even the most abstract questions or problems can relate back to tarot cards, because that's what tarot reading is. You ask a question, you pull a card, it could be any card for any question, and you have to make it work.
It's all encompassing. We can't
Hmm.
escape it now.
No,
Once
absolutely not. We're
tarot.
in too deep.
Yeah, unless, I wonder. I'd have to see. I'd have to like ask around to people to, it's like, I like, do they still do they still see it in the world, like, or experience that, and be like, oh yeah, that's very this card energy, whatever,
That'd be a
or,
fascinating question. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people that are like, what?
Oh, sure.
Or like, yeah, no, not anymore. Who knows? We'll see. Yeah, let's see. Let's see. What else? There was something else. Oh, right. Okay, so there's one thing. I'm concerned for Henry. Is he like a boy in a plastic bubble type of thing, or is he like held against his will? There's like a dark tone to the story. Like,
It's interesting. So it depends how you view it. It could definitely be a little dark. Not held against his will, maybe kind of. Henry is 12 to 14 in the story,
okay.
and he has no immune system, so he can't go outside.
Mhm.
So he is kept in his room for safety. His parents are super kind and really loving. His whole family unit is. So there's nothing like abusive going on with the story, but it is really heavy because he's a little guy. Like he wants to get out and explore and live, but he can't because he's stuck in the world. And then the part of the story that I think a lot of folks don't know, it's like really hidden away, is that it's actually a story about aliens. and how there are aliens in the forest and they are interacting with Henry in bizarre ways. Like they're making him smarter. They're coming to his room and his door.
I think it was you. you have, I don't know if it triggered something, if I'm noticing, but for some reason I'm starting to approach extraterrestrials and aliens in a new way as to rather than what I've usually seen it as, as conspiracy theories and, like X-Files theme music playing in the background. It's like because I picked up this book was sent to me from Natalia. I haven't read it yet. It's by Patrick Harper, The Daimonic Reality. And it talks about like how it's like how we switched or like spiritual experiences of like people witnessing visions of the Virgin Mary way back then. But now it's like alien abductions and seeing aliens and seeing UFOs and crop circles, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, that's a new thing. Or like Crowley witness, hearing Zadi is not the star, I'm
yep,
like,
absolutely.
Things like that. It's like, and recently they've been like kind of trying to like catch my attention, but I've kind of just like I still brush them off though. I'm still not like taking them too seriously, but I think it was with you at that deck and posting it on Instagram and seeing it that I'm like, he pulled an Inception on me.
Can I say? Hopefully a good one.
Yeah, we'll see.
Time will tell.
We'll see.
If any lights are telling you to go into the river, don't do it. Learn from Henry, don't do it.
No, I won't. No. I know of Will-o'-the-Wisps.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's see. So would they? Well, okay. Then now I'm like thinking. I'm like, could it be possibly like Fae in your deck as well, or is that like the alien supposed to be like the archetype of that? Fae, alien, other spiritual thing that's luring him into the forest and leading him out.
Yeah, I think there is like a real otherness to the aliens in this deck, and Henry interprets them as aliens, and there is some stuff in the deck that speaks to like technology specifically, or the fact that they're from like the sky and not from the earth, but that could be lots of different things. So I think it is a lens that Henry applies that you could easily put Fae or angels or whatever you like in there.
Okay, that's great, because sometimes decks come out and it's like it's so direct and so like it's like this is what it is, and then it's like I fail to like I sometimes get trapped into that box sometimes, but it's like sometimes it's like I want the direct. I'm like I want the honesty, I want the directness.
Yes.
Of like, but then it's like then I get myself into that box.
It's tricky.
Work on.
I think a lot of folks, and that's what I tried to do that with the narrative of Henry. I wanted to make the telling of Henry's story from Henry's perspective very direct. I want Henry to say what he sees and says what he thinks, say what he thinks. You know what I mean? I can't speak. But the actual like what happens in the story is kind of vague. If you were to just put all the cards in order because they're all dated, start to finish, you would have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of space for interpretation, which I think helps with that, like feeling stuck or feeling too compressed into one specific narrative or one specific thing.
Yeah, there's that. I love that. It's like which. Well, now I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but I finally have had the privilege of playing, of being able to play video games on my computer, and as typical Aries, first game I start playing, the first games I got, Dark Souls and Cuphead.
That sounds about right.
But what I usually would do is I would just watch Let's Plays, and what I loved about Dark Souls was the lore and how mysterious and hidden this is, and that kind of reminds me of like I'm like, when's there going to be a Dark Souls tarot?
I'm glad you mentioned it. There's actually a really kick-butt Dark Souls tarot on Etsy.
What?
Yeah, I know, right?
Wait a minute.
I'll message you afterwards. I forget exactly what it's called. I love Dark Souls and the way that their story is told, kind of non-linearly and abstractly. That is a exact inspiration for Henry Deck in the way that I want to tell stories.
I mean, it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Mhm.
Is that synchronicity? People in the chat, is that synchronicity? If that is, I gotta look into it, and I gotta finish Dark Souls.
Oh
Because
yeah.
that's one of the best things about it. It's like these, and particularly games with like a mystery that's like, that there's like a secret history to discover and to learn about, like kind of like tarot's history itself. People have said that it was, like it came from Atlantis, it came from Egypt, and those are fun and all, but it's like, no, it came from Italy.
Yeah, right. But it's
like
way more fun to think that it came from Atlantis or Egypt.
Yeah.
And in my head anyway, the story is more important than the reality. Like, yes, tarot comes from Egypt, from Italy. But if you think it comes from Egypt, then there's all this stuff you can read into it.
Well, actually, no, they do say the Mamluk cards. I think they say that came from Egypt, or if not, Northern Africa.
Oh, sure.
So technically, but not the way that the occultists were saying. But still, it's like, yeah, and it's. I should look into Atlantis, and it's reminded me of another book series that I read way back when. It was called The Alchemist, or The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel. Love that book series. It's such a good book series. And reading about, I'm like towards the end, I'm like, wait a minute. Now we're in Atlantis. There's UFOs. What is going on? and then like the twins. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I'm like, should I reread it? Should I reread it? No, I already have too many books to read.
The eternal problem. But it's like that. It's with any story. Some people are so dead set on a story needing to be true for it to be impactful. And I say, like, look at any movie that is, fictional, that really touches your heart or makes you laugh or cry or afraid or whatever. Like, stories are inherently very powerful because they can make you feel things even if they're not real things. And that's so how I feel about tarot too. If the fact that tarot comes from Egypt really does something for you and makes you excited about it and brings something new, sweet, why not? That's not hurting anybody.
That's true. Though I do still, it's like a part of me was like, yes, that's great and all, but then it's like, I think of like how people still have a phobia to tarot, but I think it's kind of dissolving now. I feel
it seems like it. Yes, I think there will always be phobias of stuff like tarot. It's very esoteric. There's lots of symbols. There's lots of mostly Christian imagery that's pretty dark, and that just turns some people off.
Yeah. But I usually try to say, it's like, no, Christians made it, to try and like it's drive away the fear,
Yes.
But yeah, what was the next thing? Oh, right. And you were saying like stories, and I'm like, the power of myth, by which like Joseph Campbell right there.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, it's yeah. So what next? What's going on? Okay. Oh, so anything new that you're working on, other than do you have anything planned after the Henry Deck is completed?
I actually just finished Henry Deck, which was really exciting. So that project is kind of signed, sealed, delivered. I'm just putting little teeny tiny bows on it. I don't have another tarot project lined up right now, although I'm sure one will come up. I'm kind of waiting for an idea to spring. There is a deck called Pip War that I'm working on, which is a deck of playing cards, but the entire thing is a war within itself.
Okay.
I'll show you a little preview of it.
Oh,
I haven't even showed these up on Instagram.
Exclusive
first, right here, folks. Yeah. So Pip War is playing cards, but they're not numbered. And the whole idea of this deck is, if you've ever played as a kid where you just make up rules to a game on the fly and nothing makes sense and there's no linearity to it, every card has a rule, but there are no rules to the game. So they all refer to different things. And stylistically, all the cards overlap. So, whoops. Oh, this is very hard upside down. My apologies. So the lightning from the 5 of
Oh.
Simon's is going up to the 10 of spades here. So they'll all overlap, so you can set out the entire deck in a grid and see the war as it happens.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate
always
that.
you always just come up with something like just you've done it again.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I like to make sure I don't get bored, and that's how I approach projects. Is like, is this interesting to me? Is this doing something new? I make it for me, and so far people have really seemed to like it. So, which is exciting.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You're a needed creator in the world of tarot and cards, for
It's
sure.
very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Would you? Okay, so Ocean Dry is coming to Kickstarter.
It is.
Ish next year.
Next year, early next year. I'm going to see exactly where things kind of settle with the pandemic and everything going on. But yes, as early as I can.
Okay, yeah, and so what? So it seemed like to kind of get into some difficult topics of like, you know, when Ocean Dry was completed, I think a lot of people, me included, were kind of, you know, expecting the deck to be like, okay, where's the Kickstarter, or okay, when's it being printed? Where can we get it? That's usually how a lot of people feel, how, you know, how it usually goes in this world. But you kind of like, stop, let me do my thing.
Yeah, like I was saying, you know, it is very, very recently my mindset has changed on this, but for the longest time, I just made art for me. And it was really fun to let people into that process and kind of show off Ocean Dry being made on Instagram. It was also kind of a motivator for me to get it done, because it was taking like 6 years. I'm like, we got to wrap it up, Colin. There's other things to work on. So, and I got a ton of feedback when I did not release it. I heard y'all. And there was a lot of folks who were very interested, which I so appreciate, but I wasn't ready to do it. I didn't know how to release it. The whole business side of it was completely foreign to me. So if I would have done it at the time, it would have been a disaster. And I was like, you know, I'm just going to wait until I'm ready, and hopefully the audience is still there. And if not, I'll just make the next thing, and that'll be what it is too.
I'm pretty sure if you like went silent for like 5 years and then came back, we would, at least I would, I would be ready. You know?
Okay, that's very good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, because like I said, it's something new. It's something we haven't seen before. It's like, you know, it's. But if it did, I think people would have thought it would have ended up like, I'm looking at this other book here that reminds me of it a bit, which I should reference it. I should compare what you say about your deck with this book here, which I was a little disappointed in, but I'm like, okay, I still like it, you know. Abiding the Sanctuary, which is the Waite Trinic Tarot. I don't know if you can see that. It's from Arthur Edward Way and this stained glass artist, and he like had his own associations. Like I think he puts the Emperor and the Empress on the top 2 diagonal paths on the Tree of Life.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, and he has like a card for Da'at, and it's like the priest. Here the priest doing the communion. Right here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's
what a
so
cool
it's
idea
like,
for a card for Da'at.
Yeah, but it's never been printed. I don't think it ever will be printed. I don't think it should be, because recently it's like, you know, just because it exists doesn't mean it has to be, you know, published. Kind of.
Very true.
Sometimes things have to stay as they are, where they are. And I just think of like, you know, like the Ocean Dry as this like sacred garden that, but like a bunch of people just wanted to go in and like pick all the flowers and trample on it a bit. And I kind of wanted to get in there too, but I was like, you know what? It's like, you can't you can't force it. You know?
Yeah, and definitely like to anybody who wants it or wanted it, like my intention was never to be like, it's mine, you can't have it. It just logistically I would have imploded.
Yeah, it's like
I still might, who knows.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
We need it printed.
Yeah.
Oh, Lucy's asking if it was completed. The Trinic. I think, yeah, I think all the majors were done, but I don't think there was ever an intention to do the minor arcana.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I think it's just picture on the wall, meditate on it, or like part of like a ceremony type of, decoration, perhaps. I don't know.
And I appreciate that. Let it be what it is.
Yeah. I don't know if they ever. I don't think they did intend to make it a deck. Let me see. Let me look at what people said in the chat. There wasn't much, but you know what? That's good. I wasn't overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. Okay. I don't really see that many questions, which is, I guess that's a blessing. Let's see. Silverius Materi says it's almost like landscapes allow us to interpret a feeling or an atmosphere rather than what we're reading on the figures' faces. Yeah, and even then, it's like with people's faces, it's like I sometimes have difficulty reading that. Well, no, not really. Sometimes you can tell, like with the eyes. It's like, I take that back. No, I can't. I should be able. I should be able to read human emotion. I
think Silverius raises a good point, though. Like, I think there's an element of humanity that we get so wrapped up into, like we're almost too good at reading human emotions that it's hard to escape that, where nature is so vast and big that you can let yourself really seep into it, and it gives you a very different experience.
Yeah, it just is as it is.
It just is.
Let's see what else. People are saying, Rachel Day says aliens are trying to capture your attention, Zach. Let's see, alien abduction might be in the plan soon. It's all, yeah. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Aquamarine 18 says, I'm excited for everyone to get Ocean Dry. So good. It'll be worth the wait. And the people need to be patient. Deck production takes so much research and planning. It's true. It's like, and it's also like, it's even those decks that do have like all their T's crossed and their I's dotted, it's like there's still delays and people like still throw little fits online about
totally.
it. And it's like it takes time. Delays happen. Another pandemic could happen,
Yeah, right.
You never know. God forbid.
How many things can I cross?
Yeah, let's see.
Very kind of you to say, Laura. Thank you.
Let's see what else. I think that's it. I don't know. I feel like there's more, but that's always me. I could go on and on, but I think we should end this at the hour. Maybe. There's one thing I want to say. I was hoping that Henry and Rudolph deck would like come together with the Ocean Dry and the Kickstarter and have it all. But
I mean, it wasn't done at the time. Although I'll show you this. This is just kind of a fun visual. I've been using like Ocean Dry was all digital art, and Henry deck is 100% physical art. This is the original, like actual Henry deck, which is a little impractical to shuffle. But it's all scanned. Yeah, totally. It's all scanned and digitized now, so it's much easier. It's actually a deck of cards.
I mean, people always want the thickest card stock. You put a literal metal key on one of the cards.
It's so very true. Yep. How thick do you want?
How much? Yeah, how much thick do you want?
Like 3 keys.
Wait, 3 keys?
3 keys? Ooh, I said 3 C's, but
okay. I was like, let's see. But yeah, like, I'm not sure if you would be up for or would be up to handle that, but like I'm thinking of like how look at that. It's who would think? Who would think? I'm just gonna wrap a key onto this card. Like,
absolutely.
No.
A 13-year-old boy would think that.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. It's like you would think, being trapped in that in his room, I'm assuming that that there wouldn't be much of inspiration or creativity there. But it's like no, don't underestimate him. So and kind of makes you wonder one of two things. Would Henry have been able to be as creative as he was outside of the world, or would it have been like opposite and he would have internalized it and never like put that out? Like,
I think it's
or would
a
it
really
have been even
question.
more creative? we'll have to find out later.
Yeah, Henry Deck 2.
Yeah, there we go.
Reimagining.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? What else was there? I was gonna ask something else. Oh, right. But like, I was like that Kickstarter. I'm like, go kind of Cosmovision routes and do like the different tiers of like, and have like one tier at the very tippity top, of all your decks from the past available. Would you do that? I just want to see what to plan for this Kickstarter, because my wallet is open and ready.
That's good to know. For the Ocean Dry Kickstarter, it will just be the Ocean Dry.
Okay.
I have plans to release everything I've made, though. So
Okay.
I actually have 18 oracles printed and ready to go. I'm just kind of waiting for a good time to sort of get things moving. Henry deck and Rudolph deck will be coming eventually. My playing card deck Synth will be coming out. Pip War will be coming out.
Okay.
I don't know how quickly, but the plan is for everything to come out.
Okay, there you go. Because Lucy Aqualuna here has always like asked me, it's like, do you think he's gonna release it? Will he do it all? Will he do it again? Because the 18 Oracle was so small and so limited. That was the only thing that you ever did, like, share with others, like put out there. And she was so upset that she missed out on it. But she's excited now.
Good.
that all of them is coming out. I'm like,
yes.
Good.
All right. I can't promise speed, but eventually.
Yeah. I'm like, take your time. I'm like, Marielle took 12 years to make.
Exactly.
And I think what else? The Star Tarot, one by Catherine McLean, that started back in like the 90s. It took even longer. So it's like, but it's like all the cards are done. It's like the logistics of production is the next hurdle, but you're going to take your time with that. And that, I think, is probably where some should have the most patience. Well, I think the whole process, there should be an aspect of patience.
I completely agree. Yeah, there is a weird stress on being a creator that it's hard to know unless you do it, from the making of the deck to, having people tell you what they think it should be or not be, and then the making of it, and then all the fallout after that too. I can certainly sympathize for anybody who's made one, and it's awesome. There's a rush to it, but it's a lot of work too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very easy for consumers and collectors of decks to just say, why don't they just? And it's like, they can't.
Yeah, it's just little old me. I got to figure out how to do all of it.
Yeah, and it's like I think we're at the end of the chat now.
This has been so much fun. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for showing up. Just kidding.
My pleasure. Oh no.
that was me being teasing Colin, because we scheduled it, and let's be honest, I kind of got into a slump that day because we scheduled this for last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it slipped Colin's mind, and my mood was just like down. Also, I was like, I kind of don't want to do anything today. Kind of don't want, but you know what? It worked out. I think it was meant to be today.
I think so too. Yes, and thank you for all your patience with the rescheduling. I very much appreciate it.
It's all good. So hopefully another interview. We'll see. I'll message you.
Sounds good. I'd be happy to be back if you ever like me.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Don't forget to follow Colin on Instagram for all the updates. Let's see. On his Instagram, I put links to your channel and onto your Instagram. I tried to put the Story Moon Divination Instagram, but it didn't let me. But I'll see if I can fix that later.
No worries.
I'll see. Maybe on mobile I can do it. So yeah, thank you everyone for stopping by. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to me and to Colin as well. Keep an eye out for his Ocean Dry Tarot coming out. And let's see, I think that's it. That's it. Yeah. All right. Bye everyone.